Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a kind little girl who lived in a cottage near the edge of the woods. She especially loved her grandmother, who had once made her a red wool cape. The little girl loved the cape, and as she wore it so often, she soon became known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother asked her to take some cookies to her grandmother, who lived across the woods and was feeling ill. As Little Red Riding Hood quickly packed the cookies into her basket, her mother reminded her to stay on the main path and not to talk to any strangers. It was a lovely spring day, and Little Red Riding Hood was soon on her way. As she walked along the main path through the woods, she soon came across a wolf.
"Good afternoon,"
he said with a smile.
"Where are you going on this fine day? Are those cookies I smell?"
"Yes, they're for my grandmother who lives across the woods. She's ill," the little girl replied. "But my mother told me I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she added with a frown.
"Why, I'm not really a stranger. I believe I met your grandmother once,"
the wolf lied.
"But your mother is right. You should be careful in the woods. Well, have a nice day,"
he said, as he turned to go on his way. Although the wolf seemed very nice, deep down he was sneaky and mean, since all he really wanted was to eat Little Red Riding Hood. But because men were chopping wood nearby, the wolf didn't dare try. Instead, he came up with an evil plan to trap her. Hoping to get her alone, the wolf said,
"Oh, Little Red Riding Hood, since your dear grandmother is sick, you might be interested in taking this shortcut through the woods."
He pointed to a small path that led into the dark trees. "Thank you," Little Red Riding Hood answered. "But my mother also said to stay on the main path." The wolf told her that she was a very smart little girl and walked away, thinking his plan had failed. But a few minutes later, he came up with another plan. As soon as Little Red Riding Hood was on her way, the wolf snuck back and took the shortcut himself through the woods, running all the way to Grandmother's house. As soon as the wolf arrived, he knocked on the door.
"Who's there? Is that you, Little Red Riding Hood?"
Grandmother called out.
"Why, yes,"
the wolf lied, doing his best to imitate Little Red Riding Hood's sweet voice.
"I've brought you some cookies to make you feel better."
Because she was sick in bed, Grandmother didn't get up to see who was at the door, but instead invited him to come in. Of course, before she could even let out a yell, the wolf swallowed Grandmother in a single gulp. The wolf then quickly put on Grandmother's nightgown and hopped into her bed to wait for Little Red Riding Hood, who knocked on the door.
"Who's there?"
called out the wolf, trying now to imitate Grandmother's voice. Hearing the low, scratchy voice, however, Little Red Riding Hood was alarmed.
"Grandmother, it's me, Little Red Riding Hood. Are you all right?" she asked.
"My voice is low and scratchy from my cold, and I'm sick in bed,"
the wolf called.
"Please just let yourself in, my dear, and come into my room,"
he added. And so she did. As she entered the bedroom, Little Red Riding Hood was shocked to see what she thought were her grandmother's eyes bulging from just above the edge of the covers. "Why, Grandmother, what big red eyes you have!" she exclaimed.
"The better to see you with, dearie,"
replied the wolf, as sweetly as he could.
"Please, come a bit closer so that I can get a better look at you."
As Little Red Riding Hood took a step closer to the bed, she noticed how very large her grandmother's nose suddenly appeared to be. "Why, Grandmother," she said with concern, "what a very large nose you have!"
"The better to smell your wonderful cookies with, sweet girl.
"Please come a bit closer so that I may have one,"
the sneaky wolf said smoothly. Little Red Riding Hood stepped a little closer, then stopped when she noticed how very long her grandmother's ears suddenly appeared to be.
Why, Grandmother, she said nervously, what long ears you have!
Nothing to worry about. All the better to hear you with. Please step even closer so that I can listen to your lovely voice, my child,
the evil wolf replied, getting ready to pounce on Little Red Riding Hood. As Little Red Riding Hood stepped even closer, she became very alarmed at how very sharp her grandmother's teeth now appeared to be.
Why, Grandmother, what big, sharp teeth you have! She exclaimed.
Yes, my dear, and the better to eat you with,
shouted the wolf as he quickly leapt out of bed, pouncing on Little Red Riding Hood. She barely had time to let out a loud scream before the wicked wolf swallowed her too, in a single gulp. Luckily, the woodcutters were now chopping wood near Grandmother's house. They heard Little Red Riding Hood scream and through a window saw the wolf with a now very big belly sitting in Grandmother's favourite chair. They immediately broke down the front door, grabbed the wolf, turned him upside down, and out fell Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. Although they were both shaken up, they were otherwise just fine. The wolf quickly jumped out the window, never to be seen again. From this, Little Red Riding Hood definitely learned a lesson about never talking to strangers. The end.
Know it when you see it? Let's take a look at it to make sure that you can read it.
I look at the mountain. Its sides are steep and gray. I look at the field with its tall, waving hay. The ocean and its waves are a pretty shade of blue. The river in its rocky bed flows from me to you.
Now you know the sight word its that you will often see. Remember ITS, you will read it easily. A sight word is a word that you should know when you see it. Here's the word all. Do you know how to read it?
I plant all the flower seeds all in a row. I water them all and the flowers all grow. Some are all yellow and some are all blue. See all the flowers? They are all for you.
Now you can read all. It's a sight word you will know. Watch for ALL wherever you go.